census intake question. So the question says that your patient has the following intake: 2.5 cups of coffee, and it says that the cup is 240 mLs. You have 3/4 quarts of milk, 320 mLs of Diet Coke, 1 1/4 liter of D5W IV, and 2 ounces of grits. What will you record as the patient's total intake in mLs? So the biggest thing to know when you are doing your intake questions is everything has to be converted into mL. So remember, when you are doing your intake, it's going to be everything that basically melts, it left at room temperature, it's going to melt down to liquids. And also you want to include all your IV fluids and IV medications. All right, so what I like to do is take each thing step by step. So the first thing we're going to do, 2.5 cups of coffee. All right, so what I would do is, I know that so it gives you the conversion right here, this one, but we know that 1 cup is 240. So the patient has 2 cups, so 2.5 cups. So let's start with the 2 cups first. So let's do that the patient had 240 times 2, so because he had 2 cups, so that's going to give us 600 mLs, all right? And then they had 1/2 cup. So if 1 cup is 240, half of that, all you have to do is divide by 2, and that will give us 120. So you literally could, let me write it out for you. You could take 240 and divide it by 2, and that will give you the 120. So that's the total for what the patient has for the coffee. So if I like to also label it, so coffee. All right, next we're going to go to a little tricky one, is our 3/4 quarts of milk. All right, so how I like to do the 3/4 quarts, so I literally write it out like this. I write it out 3/4, and then we know that a quart is 1,000 mLs. So we're just going to take that and divide it and multiply it, by 1,000. And if you want to put it over 1, you can. So you would do 3,000 would be on the top. So you would multiply the top, 3,000, and then 4 will be on the bottom. So that will give us 750 mLs, and that will be of your milk, okay? So only thing you have to do is set up your fraction, and then go ahead and take how much ever your quarts is, the mLs, and multiply it. Okay? So so we got our milk. Next we got our Diet Coke. So perfect. Our Diet Coke is already in mLs. So we don't have to do anything but write that down. All right? And that's our Coke. All right? Next we have our 1 1/4 liters. So we know that, let's write down our 1, and we know that 1/4 is what? 25. All right, so it's in liters, but we got to get to mLs. So we know that 1 liter is equal to 1,000 mLs. So that's going to give us 1,250 mLs, and that's going to be our IV. And then guess what? Are we going to use the grits? No, we're not going to use grits. Grits is not considered fluid intake. So all we have to do now is add. So we're going to take our 600, 120, 750, 320, and 1,250, and add those all up together. And we're missing one. Who did we miss, y'all? We are missing, it's cut out to the side. Hold on, let me see if I can make it bigger to bring it out. Hold a minute. All right, so now you'll be able to see it was cut out to the side. And then we have 11.5 ounces of grape juice. All right, so let's go ahead and now add in that 11.5 ounces. We're just going to come to the side. So we know that there is 1 ounce for every 30 mLs. So you're going to do 11.5 times 30, and you should get 345 mLs. Now we are ready to go. So we're going to add 600 plus 120 plus 345 plus 750 plus 320 plus 1250. And once you do all of that, you should get 3,265. So 3,265 mLs. So remember, fluid intake is going to be anything left at room temperature that melts down to liquid. So grits, if you leave grits at room temperature, it's not going to melt down. All right. So it says your patient had the following intake. They had 2 8-ounces of glasses of iced tea. They had 3 4-ounces of grape juice. They had 3/4 pint of ice cream, 32 ounces of soda, 1 1/2 liter of D5 WIV, and 6 ounces of cottage cheese. So remember, we're looking for mLs, so we got to convert all our intake to mLs. All right, so let's first start with the iced tea. So it says that the patient had 2 8-ounces of iced tea. So 2 times 8 will give us a total of 16 ounces, right? So let me just write that up there. 2 times 8. That will get us a total of 16 ounces that patient had. So ounces, we got to convert it to mLs. So 1 ounce is 30 mLs. So 16 times 30 will give us 480 mLs. All right, so that is the tea. So the next, the patient had 3 4-ounce cartons of grapefruit. So 3 times 4 is what? 12. So this patient had 12 ounces of grapefruit juice. So we're going to do the same. We're going to convert it. 1 ounce is 30 mLs. Multiply 12 times 30. That's going to give us 360 mLs. So that's our grape juice. Now, on to the ice cream. They had 3/4 pint. So we know that a pint is how many mLs? 500. So you can do 500 over 1. So you can do you would do 3 times 500, and that will give us 1,500 on the top, and then divide that by 4, and that will give us a total of 375 mLs. So that's 375 mLs of ice cream. And then the patient had 32 ounces of soda. So we know 1 ounce is 30 mLs. So we got to convert that ounces to mLs. So that's going to give us a total of 960 mLs of soda. And then the last one we have is your patient has the 1 1/2 liter of fluid. So we know that 1 1/2 is what? 50. So that patient had 1.5 liters, but we know it has to be in mLs. So 1 liter is 1,000 mLs. So that's going to give us a total of 1,500 mLs. All right, so now we have everything. We can add all what we need. So what are we going to be adding? So we're going to add 480, 360, 375, 960, and 1,500. So again, 480 for the tea, 360 for the grape juice, 375 for the ice cream, 960 for the soda, and 1,500 for your IV fluids. So you add all that up together, and you should get a total of 3,675 mLs. 3,675 mLs. So the question said, your patient had the following intake. They had 2.5 bowls of broth, and it lets you know that in the bowl is 180 mLs. It says they had 1 can of tomato juice, and it lets you know that the can is 4.5 ounces. And then the patient had 4 ounces of cottage cheese. They had 1 3/4 liters of normal saline. And they also had a half a pint of ice cream. All right, so let's start with the bowls of broth. Okay, well, it lets us know that 1 bowl of broth is 180 mLs. Okay, so let's just go ahead and write that down. So they had 1 bowl of broth, so that's going to be 180. But then it says they had another bowl of broth, so that's going to be another 180. And they said they had a half a bowl. So if a whole bowl is 180, half of that bowl is going to be what? 90. So if we add all those up, 180 plus 180 plus 90, the patient had 450 mLs of broth. Okay, so that's the broth. All right, next they had a can of tomato juice. So it lets us know that 1 can of tomato juice is 4.5 ounces. So we're going to take 4.5 ounces and we're going to convert that to mLs. So 1 ounce is 30 mLs. So basically all we have to do is multiply it by 30. So 4.5 times 30, that's going to give us 135 mLs, and that's going to be our TJ. So I'm just going to be tomato juice. All right, so are we going to include the cottage cheese? No, we're not. Okay, so next we have 1 3/4 liters. So we know 1 and then 3/4 is what? 0.75. So that's liters, but we need to be in mLs. So 1 liter is 1,000 mLs. So we just take our liters and multiply it by 1,000, and that will give us 1,750 mLs. So that's our IV fluid. And last, we have our half a pint of ice cream. So we know that a pint is what? A pint is 500 mLs. But half a pint, you would just divide it in half, and that will give you 250. Or if you just want to teach it just how to write it out, you do 1/2 times the 500 over 1, and then you would get 500, and then divide that by 2, and that'll give you 250 mLs. So that'll be your ice cream. So let's go over what all we have. So we're going to add 450 for our broth, 135 for our tomato juice, 1750 for our IV fluids, 250 for our ice cream. We're going to add all those up together, and we're going to get a total of 2,585 mLs. So again, the broth was 450, the tomato juice was 135, 1750 for the IV fluids, and 250 for the ice cream. Add those all up and you'll get 2,585.